Hello, my name is Christopher Greenwood from the World Consciousness Alliance, and I'm delighted to share in another conversation for change with you, which is part of our series Renaissance of Humanity. Now is the time really that we should speaking more about our responsibilities rather than our rights, and that's in particular for the environment, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. Because as we see now, there's been such shift, such dramatic impact because of the human activity on Earth. And I think in everybody's hearts, there's something which people know that needs to be done, but are unsure what to do. All the various philosophies that we've been involved in, the greed-based philosophies, the profit-based philosophies of consumerism, it's given no breathing space for the Earth or for the world. And what we're doing is we are bringing on people who share the same philosophy as us to speak what needs to be spoken at this time. So thank you very much for joining today. And we have a very, very honorable guest. His name is Angaangaq, and he's from the land of the big ice in Greenland. From a young age, it's been his mission to tell the world of that diminishing big ice due to the effect of climate change. His work has taken him to more than 70 countries around the world as a keynote speaker at international conferences on climate change, environmental issues, indigenous affairs, and he's represented the Arctic people at the UN. He's met with personalities like Nelson Mandela, Mikhail Gorbachev, Pope John Paul II, Pope Francis, and even the Dalai Lama, and participated in many documentary films. He now passes on his knowledge and his teachings to various universities, schools, and companies. It's these teachings that have enabled people to survive in one of the harshest climates on Earth. This stems from one of the most peaceful cultures on Earth, the Eskimo culture, that has never seen or experienced any war. I'm very excited to be in conversation today with a true elder, not just of his land, but for the world. And he says, it's easy to melt ice on the ground. The hardest thing is to melt the ice in the heart of man. Only by melting the ice in the heart of man, man will have a chance to change and use his knowledge wisely. So his name's Angaangaq, with the mission to melt the ice in the heart of men. And today, he's going to share his philosophy, his wisdom in this conversation for change. And I'm incredibly thankful that you've joined us here today, Uncle, as I know that you're more warmly referred to. I'm really looking forward to the conversation that flows and the awareness that we can bring to all those that are watching it.
And I put on my medicine as a shaman. I put it on because I wanted to be in that spirit of being a shaman when I talk to you.
It's an honor.
I carry the spirit of the polar bear, which is the greatest wanderer of the four-legged animals on Earth. She wanders entire circumpolar world. That's where she lives. And my big necklace is her favorite food, which is the bearded seal. And for that, I did not shave this morning. I wanted to be like the bearded seal. So that's my spirit of a shaman. So anyway, Christoph, so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for facilitating all this. Christoph, I'm ready to talk to you, whatever you want to know. I will do my best to answer.
I think what I was going to start with as well, because what you've explained there is really what I wanted to come from the first question, which is Greenland is quite a mythological place, the land of the big ice. Mm-hmm. And what you just spoke then as well, it would be great if you could share a little bit more around what you feel Greenland is contributing to the world and the philosophy that it's bringing forward.
Greenland is really, really big. I don't know if you noticed that. If we put it in North America, or the border of Canada in Manitoba and North Dakota in the United States, she goes down to South America. or in European terms, when you put it to Oslo in Norway, it goes to the middle of Tunisia in Africa. So she is really long. She's really big country. It's the biggest island on earth. And her significance is today is that the big ice is melting. Because you and I, we have not honored our responsibilities on earth as humans. You know, every being has a responsibility. When you listen to the old people, of course, Earth didn't start the way we know it today. It was a big molten one. And the old people tells us when we were young that the center of Earth is still molten as she was born long ago. And then sometimes big mountains would speak. When they speak, they spew out ash and fire out of the center of Earth. And that's the way they call it. When the mountain speaks, many will die. Many will barely survive. Few will have a life. So that's what happened when the volcanic eruption happens. Now we call them volcanic eruptions. In the old days, in our tradition, it's a big mountain speaking. They roar from the molten one. And then out of that, the mineral world was born. And then, of course, after that, the water came. And water came, that life began. Yeah. And then the plant world grew. And then these animals grew. And then we came. When you and I, we came, our responsibility is to be caretakers and custodian of what's on and what's within of Mother Earth. That's yours and my responsibility. Caretakers and custodians. And how long have people lived there? All depends on what historian or scientist you talk to. We have not come yet to full agreement how long we have lived on this earth. Because every year, scientists are beginning to find, archaeologists begin to find more and more distorting the known history of the evolution of mankind. And the two-legged ones, as we call them. We thought that we came from specific one area, but now we begin to understand that we came from many places on Earth. Many species of two-legged ones have lived. And then as we traveled, we mingled. And out of that grew the modern man today. So that's the importance of our story. And we don't know exactly, because the big eye, the last one, the big eyes left and retreated from North America and Europe and Far East just 6,400 years ago. She started to retreat. 6,400 years is not really a long time, but no one lived on the big ice. It was just uninhabitable. But on the outskirts of the big ice, people lived. And as she retreated, people moved. And as my grandmother said, then we came back home. And now we know that my family came back when the big ice retreated more than 5,000 years ago. They settled on the beach of the big ice. That's the last big ice. Now it's retreating. Now we know how long we have been there. We have been there more than 5,000 years. We've been hunting the animals, and the bones have become stones. The bone had to be inside the earth without seeing the sunlight and without seeing feeling the oxygen and being locked inland and become petrified or become a stone. That takes more than 5,000 years. So now we know that my family had lived there in the same village that long. Now it is a sacred historical site by UNESCO, recognizing the teachings of my grandmother, accepting them as valid historically for the world to know.
And you in the world are recognized as a shaman, a great elder, and well-respected spiritual leader in the world. What has been your philosophy for your life?
I wasn't born to do what I do. I only became aware of it when I grew up. When I walk into the presence of my grandmother, she will always exclaim, "Oh, Angaangaq," which means that the young one who looks like his uncle have got it, whatever it is that I got. But I never wanted to be different from you or anyone else. If you don't have snow on your boots and I have snow, I will remove the snow because I didn't want to be different from anyone else. I'm going to be 73 next week or next 10 days. To my recollection, and I remember things when I was a few months old, I have never heard anyone laugh at my grandmother for what she says. She always just accepted what she says. And it's really funny that when I was young, because my father was a government agent, we moved to South Greenland, to the very south tip of West Greenland. I was, I think, 13 years old. And we were strangers in that village. And very quickly, the kids would just follow me. Whatever it is that they saw in me, they just made them follow me. No matter where I went, there were all these kids after me. And it was really interesting. When I grew up in 1975, I was asked to become a runner for the elders by my parents. I was instructed to become a runner. A runner is the one who goes from a village to the next village to tell that someone is born to your family, or someone has left this earth from your family to the next village, or someone is sick, they need some help. So that runner would travel constantly in directions wherever he or she sent. In 1975, I had moved to Canada in 1974 because I didn't want to live under the oppressive structure of the Danish government. So I moved to Canada, not just to realize that instead of being Danes in Greenland, the Englishmen and Frenchmen were oppressing the native people also. And I was one of the first one of the young people of the world of the world of Greenland to travel that far. So my mom and dad were so proud that I traveled and asked me to become the runner. They all came to my mother's and father's house in 1975 in June. And their little house was full of smoke because everybody was smoking cigarettes. And there was smell of coffee. All these grandmothers had been baking, and it was a heaven on earth, except the air. But there, my instruction was, he said, when I go to India, I should come back home. I should tell them whom I met, what I saw, what I experienced, and what I heard. Then they would send me to the world with a message. And the message in the beginning was that the big ice is melting. That is 1978, when I first time spoke at the United Nations about the melting of the big ice. So that's pretty important, because my people they are the only people on earth who live with the big ice. realize that the big ice is melting, and that will have a significant impact on people of India. And it does. Not just India, for the rest of the earth. That was 1978. When I came home from having spoken at the United Nations, I came home and my mother and my father had called all the elders. Oh, they just came and this incredible atmosphere. And that was in August. And I told them that I spoke at the United Nations, and I called it the world government in our language. And there was this old man in his 90s, and he just leaned on me and said, "My son, do the world government own the earth?" Because the Danish government owned Greenland. So he wanted to know if the rest of the world is owned by the United Nations. I always remember that. I looked at this beautiful old man, and I just smiled at him. I didn't know exactly what to say to him. I should have said no. And I should have said, yes, we need a world government. In those days, I did not know. Today, when I meet this old man, when I travel on to the next world, I will tell him that those people are left my grandchildren, and their grandchildren will establish the world government. Because the world needs a government, not the way we do it now. Remember, we are not living a very good way with ourselves. Remember the teaching of the four colors?
I don't know this one.
Oh, you know, if you look at the earth, the sun will always rise in the east. And when the sun will come in orangey color as light is being born, and the moment she leaves the contour of the earth, she becomes yellow. And then now we realize that there are actually yellow people on this earth. Isn't that amazing? And then at noontime, when sunshine highest upon us, she is always white. Now we realize that there are actually white people on this earth. And I have visited some of these people. They're really beautiful people, these white people. You know? And then in the west, when the sun sets, she is always red. And my grandmother would tell us at this time of the setting of the sun, you are as red as the setting of the sun. And we will look at our skin, and we look at each other, and they really are red. Because not like in India, in the north, sun sets really, really slowly, and long time it takes. In India, she just sinks, you know, and next one is dark. So I'm one of these red people. North America, Caribbean, Pan America, and South America. That's the land of the red people. And now we know in modern day calendar, we consider those two continents be the last continent before the post nighttime, and then the next day is born. Dateline. It's so interesting. So, and at night, it's always black. Now we have learned actually there are black people on this earth. So we are 4 tribes on this earth. But because we have not understood each other's responsibility, we are at war with each other constantly. On top of that, when religions came, instead of uniting our religions, understanding like we have been learning, like, you know, like in the grade schools, you know, that's the best way I can really describe that. That when Krishna came, he brought us the concept of God. Before that, we didn't have God. Some people believed in the Great One. Some people believed in the man who made us. Some believed in the mystery of life. Some believed that the all-forgiving or or loving, or all the attributes we give that great being. That's when we all realize that there's God. He's the one who brought it. And after him came Abraham, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, Baba, and Baha'u'llah. All these big religions. It's like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9. At grade 9 today, you and I, you become young people. And when we leave our teenagehood, we will be young people. And then we prepare to meet the one who loves us so we can create the next family, next generation. And then you will become adult. When you and I will become adults, we would have understood the beauty of each other, not recognizing the differences. No, the beauty of differences. We haven't done it yet.
No.
Mankind has not yet grown to become an adult.
So what you were coming to, though, we spoke about the four peoples, and that you've met many, you've traveled the world, you've seen all the varieties that we see. So for the World Consciousness Alliance,
and that's really interesting. Many, many years ago, Robert Mueller, the first UN General Assembly, the executive, at the time of his retirement, he created World Commission on Global Consciousness and Spirituality. And for some reason, I have no idea why, I was asked to become a member of it. But I was smart enough to realize that before they had a chance to change their minds, I said yes. And I locked my work. And I realized really when my elders made me a runner, I saw the world. I literally traveled to places where they talk about climate change. So I was able to come back home and tell them they're going to meetings. I became part of those meetings. I became an elder for the United Nations and traveled the world. And then later on, I became a member of the World Commission on Global Consciousness and Spirituality. And it's so interesting to realize that how we are struggling like teenagers. As mankind is stuff like teenagers. And you can see that here in Canada and in Denmark, where indigenous people who lived on this big island of Greenland and third of Canada, the Eskimos, that's their land. My family, Ojibwe tribe, Indians, I live on their land now in Ottawa, right at the border of Mohawk and Ojibwe land. Right these very days in Ottawa, they're struggling to recognize Ojibwe people. This is 2020. And then in the justice system, and I worked for Government of Canada as a contractor because in the Constitution, Indigenous people have the right for their beliefs. Constitution is recognized. So they have the right to have talking circles. And they have the right to have the sacred ceremony of the sweat lodge. So I did that for federal jails in Eastern Ontario and Western Quebec. I would drive more than 5,000 kilometers going from jail to jail to jail to jail to jail. And we are less than 3% of the population of Canada. And we occupy more than 50% of the bed space in jails.
Wow.
Which means Canada has systemic racism towards Native people. Just like in Greenland, in their own land, by the Danish system, they are jailed more often. Just like in Alaska, Alaska, pretty well all of it is indigenous land, the Indian land and the Eskimo land. And the same thing, the bed space in jails is reserved for the indigenous people. In United States, the same thing, except now we have black people and yellow people. So, and white people in the United States is very small percentage of the 380 million people. White people are just a small percentage. It's less than 50%. What the bed space in the jails are reserved for indigenous Americans, black people, Hispanics. That's just in North America.
Mhm.
And it goes on all over the world. So the settlers make themselves better than thou. And you can see that everywhere. When I started traveling as a runner for the elders, I came to Washington, D.C. because I worked with the Eskimo World Organization. And I went there to meet with the Secretary of State of the United States of America, Cyrus Vance, under Jimmy Carter's presidency, because we wanted to have right to hunt bowhead whales in Alaska, because that's our sustenance. We cannot grow cows in the farm, it's just too cold for these animals. So I went there, and Jimmy Carter approved of that. And I was there at Christmas time. In those days, I don't know if you remember, in those days we had something called postcards. You know, it's not SMS. It's actual physical postcard. At Christmas time, in those days, I collected T-shirts and postcards because I wanted to show the elders whom I met, what I saw, what I experienced, what I heard. So, and I took those Christmas cards home. And my mother and my father invited all these elders. And it's so interesting. Every postcard had that Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and peace on earth in those days. And I remember another elder is in a complete bewildered mind, but with innocence of the heart. Do these white people in America only want peace on Christmas Day? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
They only want peace on Christmas Day. And today we have learned that the United States of America, this little country on this earth, has never known one single day of peace in her existence. England, where you come from, have never known one single day of peace in the world of the land they took over. And as you and I will become adults, my prayer is that you know the significance of Greenland in this regard. All the lands on earth where people live, all the countries on earth where people live, the only land on earth which has never known war is Greenland. So as I grow older, as I talk to the elders, it becomes evidently clear the task ahead.
I wanted to follow on from this as well, because it's with this, if I linked it back to what I was thinking of, this pursuit of money, of power, of acquisition, of possessions, of more. We've lost the understanding of what we could potentially could be, as you say, this in this beautiful way of how we would actually grow to be an adult from where we are now. But it's clearly needed in the situation that we have. How do you think we can bring that understanding to the people of the world so that they can actually feel it and experience it, rather than this mad rush for just the temporary glories and things of life?
Very, very interesting question about money. When I've been traveling for professionally more than 51 years. I come from a small village of 3 houses, and there was no electricity, there was no running water except the river. And I was wanting to skin clothes on the animals. 1960, I got my first real boots, real shoes. I felt so modern because it had heels. And I was just a modern man. There was one other boy who had also shoes. So him and I will walk, and all the kids will follow us, and then they all have skin boots. And I would show my boots, and people would try them, and they were too big to me, but who cares? I felt modern. So in my travels, I collect coins until 10 years ago. When the kids grew, so we gave up our house and went to an apartment. And we went to the apartment because we had a break in the house. They stole the computers, all the jewelry from my wife, and then a huge glass bowl, very heavy, at least 20 kilo or more, of coins from around the world. I always told my wife that we will retire on these things because they are worth money. But the thieves stole the whole thing. So every exchange I have done, exchange agency took money of me to pay for the fee. Every time I went from Denmark to Sweden, I had to have a Swedish krona. And every time I had to go back to Denmark, then I had to exchange them again. So for $5, 5 kronas worth, they take 2 when I enter Sweden. And when I go back to Denmark, they take 2. So I could only spend 1. That's how the monetary system was arranged in the old days. Then euro was created, which became much easier. And then American dollar was really, really important. But now it's not important anymore. Now the world's going to have to think of creating a currency for the world. Just along with the exchanges, we make somebody extremely wealthy. Every time you change pounds to euro, you make somebody really rich, the owners of that exchange. So we had to have something done about it. The idea is not to rob each other or steal from each other. The idea is to lift the economy for all of us. So that's the way it works now. Do we need to change it?
Of course.
You know, can you imagine when you come to India that you will not change your money? That the money you have will be good in India as the money in India is good in England or in Canada or in Australia or in China or in Japan, in South America. The way we do things is not good for mankind. You know, before the pandemic of Corona, we really advanced ourselves to lessen the poverty of the world. We were almost there at the rate of success. The pandemic fell apart, made everything fall apart. Tonight, when you go to sleep, how many do you think will have starved to death? They could not afford. Look at the lowlands of India. In Burmese, Thailand, Vietnam, those lowlands who are now above the sea level, trying to make a living, to feed their families. Many will die of hunger. In Africa, I was young, long time ago. I was going to college in Denmark when Biafra, country of Biafra, it was before you were born. They were starving, so we collected. I was part of those people at the college who organized things so we could collect money. We had buckets of money, people, and then we delivered them in the office. I don't know what happened behind closed doors, but we delivered the money to Biafra. Next day, Biafra was still starving, even though we had given them billions of money. So somebody in Africa, in Biafra, became really, really rich, and people were still starving. We do that constantly. And somehow, you and I, we're going to have to grow up and become adults within ourselves, not just physically, but spiritually, to understand that we cannot carry on the way we do. We cannot. We are not of service to mankind if we don't change it. The service is to make sure that everyone's spirit is lifted. That's your work. That's Samuel's work. That's my work. To lift the spirit above the present. I grew up with that concept that the old elders is to lift my spirit above the present. What is lifting above my spirit above the present? So I can feel good about myself. I can believe in myself. I can trust myself. I can accept myself the way I am. But most importantly, I can love myself. In the world, we do the opposite. We all fall in love. That's the English expression. In spiritual, anything falling is like that. That means that somehow you will hit the bottom and you will get hurt. Love should never hurt, Christopher. It's the most beautiful thing in one's life is to become in love, where both parties will never get hurt. So the equality of man and woman then becomes really, really important. I grew up with a sea eagle, the biggest eagle in Northern Hemisphere. Her wingspan is about 3 meters long. That's a pretty big bird.
Yeah.
So when you grow up with it, you realize that, as our grandmother would explain, the left wing is always a female. And we will ask her, why so? That's the closest to the heart. And the woman is always closest to the heart. And we ask her why? Because she would become a mother. And the mother is the one who will raise the child first. She would be the first one to feed the child, the first one to clothe her. And then the man is far away from the heart. But family, when I had to lift my family, my wings had to be equally strong. My wife on my left and me on the right. And the family is to lift. And it's so interesting. If the wings are not equally strong, the birds can never lift. It's like Air India or British Airways. They can never lift if the wings are not equally strong. No matter how many engines you put on that thing, they cannot lift. with wings are not equally strong. And as a hunter, I learned that the most beautiful way is that in the springtime, when the birds come back flying up north, the lakes are not all melted. There will be ice on the, and the birds would crash because of the winds. They were trying to keeping the balance together, but at the last moment, something happened and they crash. And many breaks the necks and just take them and just say, oh, thank you. I didn't have to shoot anybody. He was not in balance, so she died. And that's what happens in real life when you and I, we lift our families up. When airborne, one day you will be much stronger than your woman. So you guide your family. And another day, your woman will be much stronger and she will guide you. But when you have to land again, if you're not equally strong, you will crash. Mm-hmm. And I learned that in the modern language, we call it divorce. And if you look at the marriage and divorce situations in the Western world, that happens every second. Lifting the spirit is to understand, who am I? And I look at myself, oh, my name is Angaangaq, and it means the man who looks like his uncle. What am I doing here? Is to lift the spirit of my family, to lift the spirit of the people who comes to me. It's really interesting when you think like that. That's why it becomes so evident that you and I, we have yet to grow to become adults. When you and I will become elders, the whole world will be so different. In my land, in Greenland, we have a prophecy which says that one day the sacred fire will come. Sacred fire is really sacred. But because of the big ice, everything was covered by ice and everything died. All the plants, all the trees, they died. But I grew up knowing that there were trees in my land through our grandmother. And the only time I ever heard somebody laughing at her was by Danish people, because my father spoke Danish. So they come to our house, and of course he invites the elders. And so Danes will ask stories of my grandmother, how was it before we came? And at one time, she tells about that there were trees in our land. And those Danish educated people, government people, were literally physically laughing at her. I have never seen my grandmother shrinking herself, looking down. I grew up that one day I will tell these men who they were speaking to. That's how strong I felt about it. That now I have told them. Because now scientists have proven that before the big ice came, there were big forests of the rainforest. And in our story, the oral history, we knew that those trees would stand again and the sacred fire would come home. As a child, as children, we would think about how would the sacred fire come? Would it come by a big ship? But in those days, ships were by trees, wooden ships. And the ocean was really wild. And if it goes and this fire would burn the ship, then we start to see the airplanes flying over us. But every time they turn, we can see that the fire will be going up and the plane is turning, and then it will burn the plane. We didn't know that there was air pressure inside the airplane, Nobody told us so. So we would talk about how would the sacrifice come home. I was told by my father and my mother that I should bring back the sacrifice. It took me 40 years exactly. Well, I did bring back the sacrifice. And I, talking to the elders and how do I do that? Then I will invite ashes of the sacrifice around the world. So I sent a message to the world. We're going to bring back the sacrifice to Greenland. But I need the foundation of the fire, of the ashes. And 247 ashes arrived by mail from 7 continents of the world. 247 ashes of the sacrifice came. So, and my great aunt and my uncle, my father's youngest brother, and their aunt, my great aunt. My great aunt is the daughter of my grandmother's older sister, youngest daughter. She just died 2 years ago, just before she became 94. That my uncle and one of my many family members, our elder Adam, they light up the seal oil lamp. The wicks we use are the Arctic cottons. And then everyone was given a chance to touch that lamp, seal oil lamp burning. My uncle took it around from person to person to person to person. And then he gave it to his aunt. And because the seal oil lamp was ancient stone, really heavy, about 3 or 4 kilos. For a 90-year-old woman, it's really hard to carry. So I helped her. And then before that, she went up to the mountainside with Dr. Jane Goodall and all the other women, my wife, and to cut trees for the first time in thousands of years. And then they carried them down. And I had prepared everything. She put it down to the dead trees, dead bushes, and then fresh tree leaves. And at the bottom, 247 ashes of the world. That the fire died the moment she put it down. And I thought, holy shoot, God. And it's really interesting. My belief in myself, my belief in the history of my ancestors was so limited that I lost trust in myself. But mysteriously, just she exploded. And now we have sacrifice in Greenland based on ancient belief, supported by the world. That's growing up and lifting the spirit of people and taking care of each other, not to fight each other, not to kill each other, but supporting each other. And that time will come, I am confident. How it will come? In my limited belief of the world, because I know not the history of the world, is that you and I, we recognize each other as equals. Not better educated or less educated. But that makes big difference to us. And we do that because I'm educated. I went to college, and this one didn't. No, my job should be, yes, I went to school, and thus I need to lift the others. Not looking down on them, or say, hey, come. And that's our work. That's the philosophy I grew up with. I do not know how it will work at the end of the day, but I feel it is important that we do that. You know, I have met many, many spiritual leaders and religious leaders of the world. And it's really interesting, so realizing many feel bigger than others. I noticed that so much in the Vatican where I'm a cardinal. But when you take off the clothes of that person, it's just a man. And when you go to India, you see the spiritual leaders put up on a higher chair than others. But when you take off their clothes, it's just like everyone else. So in our effort to unite ourselves together and get out of the pain we have created, we truly had to become the equals and learn to lift each other's spirit about the present. Those are the teachings I grew up with. There's no name for them except Eskimo tradition. And I have traveled the world with that story. The politicians come, scientists come, the religious leaders come, spiritual leaders come, and just ordinary people from the streets of Argentina, of New Zealand, of Australia, or China, or Italy. And then he asked me, what does it all mean with the climate change? I say that the ocean will rise, the wind will become stronger, and it will be extremely destructive, billions of people. And it's so interesting, Christopher. My grandmother also said, and you know, in every springtime in the north, everything freezes. The lakes freezes, the rivers freezes, ocean freezes. But yesterday, on the 69th parallel of the latitude, that's pretty high north. That's more than 500 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. Mm. It was +7 Celsius. No ice, or no any inkling of ice in the lakes, rivers, or the ocean. This is October 15th. Now it is October 20th. So things have really changed. And when that big river will come in the springtime, when the warm lake water becomes warm from the sunshine, it will begin to expand. And then she will just explode, break up. And it's really interesting to watch it. I had many, many chances to watch these things. And when the river comes, we know it's going to come now. So we will be standing on both sides of the river to fish as much fish as we can catch. Because with the explosion of water, all these fish will come down. We've been eating ocean food for a long winter nights. And then all of a sudden, fresh fish will come with the river. But the caution of our grandmother was always, if someone falls into the river, your family, do not jump into the river, she say. And we ask her, why not? Because if Christopher jumped into the river to save his family, he too would become the food of the river. Because the current is too strong. And grandmother said, no, learn to say thank you to your family. Tell them how much you love them, how much they have meant for you. Then wish them well, and then run up the hill. With the world which will come after that needs Christopher and his expertise and experience, in his capacities and strength, his love. And it's so interesting now, October 20th, there's only 2 countries on Earth right now who haven't had corona: Greenland and Nunavut in Arctic Canada. They're the only ones who haven't had the corona yet. Hopefully they will stay clean. Hopefully they will adhere to the rules of physical distancing and wearing the masks and so on. Because we need the expertise when we need to rebuild the world in the way we need to. But we cannot do it unless you and I and the rest of us in the world become behaving as an adult. Not like a late teenager, say me, 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 me. Not you, me, 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 me.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, you can see that in politics.
Very much so.
And then you can see that in religions. Oh, my religion is better than yours. You have to remember that. We have better hymns, we have better prayers than yours. You have to change your money when you go to India. You have to change them again when you go back to Great Britain. You have to do things, and it is much more expensive in India than it is in England. So one day, I believe we will have one monetary system for the world. We have to have a reset the system.
Yeah.
How, we haven't yet quite learned. I haven't figured it out yet. But it's not financial people who should do it. Why? Because they are the most corrupt people. How are they corrupt? Me, 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 and my profit. Big corporations where everyone else is starving, not having clothes. It's really disturbing to realize that now we do shopping through the internet. And when we return things, they are just discarded into the garbage.
Mm.
All the clothes we buy go to the garbage. And in the meantime, people on the other side of the world don't have clothes to put on them. Or we throw things away. Because we educated and civilized people. So the inequities you and I be experiencing are becoming more and more visible as the pandemic is growing. So when you and I we grow up, we really need to do things differently. Not to be better than anybody else, but to become equal to everyone else. So that's the philosophy I grew up with.
I had some more questions, but I think this has been a lot of your time. So I think we can.
No, I'm here. I'll reserve the whole day for you.
Oh,
So, yeah.
this is great. It's really nice to hear these stories.
But if it don't make sense, just let me know, because I need to be able to. I need to learn to tell them in such a way they can be understood easily. I listened to them since I was small. Only then can you tell a living story. We don't write things down. Everything is oral.
The old tradition ways. Yeah, this is nice. Yeah.
So ask me more. I'm enjoying your company.
It was good. I was just thinking to Corona as well, because back where I'm from, I'm actually from a small island, and we don't have Corona there actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
Which island are you from?
Isle of Man.
Where is that?
It's
Oh,
in between England and Ireland.
Okay. Oh, fantastic.
It's good there. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. It's really, there's a hope for that Corona. Yes, many more would die, and because the way we do to each other, but as it comes down, my prayer is that we would have learned to take care of each other better. The young man who asked for help yesterday, 13 weeks is a long time for a 60-year-old man to be in hospital and under 24-hour care. That's a long time, eh?
A very long time.
But that's just one out of the millions. And more millions are coming. We don't have one rule.
Yeah, there'll be more. And like you said, if this is just the start of the river, then what else comes next as well?
And more are coming.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I grew up with the story of this big river, saying that many will die, many will barely survive, few will have a life.
Wow.
And I wonder, which part do I want to belong to? Yes, I will die no matter what happens. I'm that age group. But when I look at myself, I still have a pretty long life to lead. Because I come from that lineage where my family lives a long time. My grandmother's oldest sister was 103 years old when she died.
Ah.
And that's without medical doctors. She lived a normal life in the Arctic, ate the good food, walked the good land, and loved. So I want to be like her when I grow old. So because if I really want to become a worthy elder, I had to understand myself better. When I became an elder, when I was asked to be an elder monk, I went back home to my mother and said, "This is the gift they're giving me, and they want me to be the elder. What should I do?" So she took it and she smelled it, shook it, and looked at it, and she said, "My son, you're just going to have to learn to grow up to and become worthy of being an elder." And she gave it to me. So I said, "How?" And she looked at me, "You're just going to have to learn to grow up to it and become worthy of being an elder." And that's it. And that's my education. It's so interesting when I get messages from Siberia, from Peru, from Australia, New Zealand, from Africa. "My dear elder," I said, "what the heck did I do to deserve an elder for so many people? What does it really mean? What should I do?" For those questions, now that I'm alone at home, my wife is no longer there because she's sick with the Alzheimer's. Those are things I had to think about. How do I become that worthy elder? What does it mean?
I think you mentioned the importance of whales before. So for you, for your people, the philosophy is very much connected to whales, as I understand.
The whales are really interesting animals, you know that. There are many, many kinds of whales. The smallest one lives in Greenland, in the North Atlantic. That's Angaangaq, the smallest dolphin, a meter-long whale. Then the biggest animal on Earth is blue whale. She is more than 40 meters long and weighs more than 40,000 kilo. She's enormous. And my family hunted that in the kayaks with a harpoon. And I think, wow, they must have really been well-balanced people to understand how to hunt together this biggest animal on Earth. The fascinating part of it is that they will never kill one animal without having got permission from the animal. The whale is, and then I learned later on that there's something where someone was eaten by a whale. What's his name? I don't, maybe it's Jewish or Christian tradition, where a man was eaten by a whale. The big whale will never eat anything bigger than your hand. The big whale cannot swallow me. or you. They're not built for that. They're built for the smallest things, plankton. You know, when you travel in the ocean, you can see swarms of plankton traveling. They follow the current and the wind. They don't swim on their own. They just follow. And those big whales find them, and they will go around and around, create that, current around them. You know, so they begin to go like that. And then they will go down, and they will go up and open the mouth and swallow planktons. Of course, because planktons are there, small fish will be there. Amongst them comes also small fish. But everything bigger than this, they will discard. Everything else, they just swallow. So, mysterious animal, the biggest animal on earth is plankton. This spiritual significance of them is really enormous when you think of it. But you and I, we think that we are men. We're strong. We can do anything. But when you compare yourself to the whale, you become nothing, really nothing. Blue whale travels from the North Pole to the Antarctic and back. So she swims really big distance, very big distance she travels. And in between she gives birth, you know. And then they say that the whale is enormous and she can go deep. They now have measured that she can go more than 3 kilometers down. That's enormous pressure. The old people say, you and I, inside ourselves, we are deeper than the deepest of oceans of earth. So Christopher is deeper than the deepest of oceans of earth inside himself. How deep are the oceans? More than 11 kilometers. That's how deep they are, some of them. One of them is in East Greenland. When we think of you, how deep you are, if you learn to travel inside yourself, there is so much to know about you. It's really interesting how much we need to learn about each other. The modern day meditation comes mostly from India. And that's where I can never remember how it is with Om, you know, Om. We call it breathing deep. Anasatam, breathing deep. We do it deep. And we begin to realize how deep we are inside. The idea is to bring that depth up and learn to live that depth we have. That's the significance of the whale. That's what she teaches us. And when you can learn to do that, then you will leave yourself on this earth footsteps. Some call it marks on this world. My prayer is that I can leave behind me something worthy of living for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, because my responsibility as a shaman is to lift the spirit above the present, so you can learn to see the depth you carry in this world. And because you are deep. On the other side, the gray sky, your spirit, is enormous. And when you look at the big sky above you, you realize it's really, really big. But inside you, you're bigger. Inside you, you are bigger than the big sky above you. And you are far more complex than the big sky. It's very easy to get to know where you are on Earth when you look at the sky at night. Three of my brothers were all sailors. Particularly our oldest brother, He died, but he was a captain on a big oil tanker. He would look at the skies and then he would point on the map, this is where we are. And we would say, how do you know? Listen to grandmother, he says. Look up to the sky and you can see where the stars are, what time it is of the night, and then bring it down and you will know where you are. That's how simple the big sky is. Or inside yourself, you're far more complex than the big sky. So you and I, we have more to learn about ourselves, the depth we carry and the enormity of our spirit. How can we live those two things and bring it to the world in which we live? You and I, we can never change the world. It's just simply too big. Or we can change the world in which we live. That's the idea. I'm no longer a runner for the elders. Everyone have died. The last one to pass on of the original elders was my great aunt. She was almost 94. 2 weeks before 94 years old, she died. So now I am the only one left in my family, of my grandmother, my father's mother's family, to carry to my world, which is in Greenland, and the Eskimo world of Canada, Alaska, and Siberia, and then to the rest of the earth. How can I do that and truly make a mark, not on the earth itself, but in the spirit of the people I met? And when I was in India, I met really beautiful people. But then I met the other side also. Wealth on the highest note to the poverty of the lowest poverty you can imagine. The imbalance we have created amongst ourselves is enormous. Imagine you are now learning to reverse it, that it becomes lifted. It goes for the same for me amongst my people. The rich ones are the Europeans who come to work in my land. The poor ones are my own people. They have become tenants in their own land, not the owners of the land. We can never own earth or be responsible for earth. So imbalance have been created. And that's only 300 years. India was conquered many, many years ago by the Western world. And it has really created an imbalance. I am creating a healing center back home because I was asked to do that. So I'm building a completely new village, a center for healing. And before my great aunt died and my uncle, my father's younger brother, died, they changed the concept to become the center for healing for the world, because they realized it's not only back home in Greenland that healing needs to be done, it's all over the world. And that what I'm creating a completely new village based on principles of what I grew up with, that I'm not better than you, no one is, or we are all equal, or we have been suppressed by the world in which we live. Now we will take ownership of ourselves and lift each other's spirit. So when we spread our wings, we become the wings of the eagle. But the eagle can never lift unless her people, female and the males, are equally strong. Those are the spiritual principles I know. Because I have never read a book in my life. Did you know that? I've never read a book because I was so afraid that I would mix up the teachings of my people or my grandmother. so I never read the book. Now pandemic makes me look at that thing, and I start to look at the thing, and I realize they haven't read one single book. How do we know that? We haven't eliminated inequality. We need to lift them up. And then just say thank you to you with a chant. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, what? Is it whale?
No, this is a caribou skin.
Caribou, caribou. Okay.
Yeah. Normally, I would build it with the stomach skin
Yeah.
of the whales. But, it's very difficult. We have strange laws.
Yeah. It's not...
I cannot bring in seal skin or whale stomach skins into Canada, United States, EU, or anywhere else on earth. Well, her name is Qilaud, which means an instrument from the great sky. It's amazing to think about it. It's a circle. The circle which had no beginning, no ending, in which we all belong. The beauty of the circle is that we cannot see each other's backs. And the strength of the circle is that we can only see each other's beauty. That's the spiritual principle of my people. The only people on earth who has never known war. Oh, oh, oh. That's the prayer of melting the ice in your heart. The old people say only by melting the ice in your heart, in the heart of man, man will have a chance to change and begin using his knowledge wisely. So I pray that you and I, we will grow and truly learn to melt the ice in our heart. Because everyone who lives on earth is worth recognizing and accepting. There's only one earth. It's not an earth for people of India, or China, or Russia, of Europe, Africa, Australasia, South America, or North America. It's not divided like that. It's only one earth for all of us. And if we can do that, we can truly lift the spirit of everyone. That's melting the ice. That's when we can learn to use our knowledge wisely. And people of India have so much knowledge. People of England have so much knowledge. And everywhere else on earth. But we forgot to melt that ice in our heart. Would you bring my love and greeting to my brother and the whole family and your family? And when you meet me downtown London, you owe me a cup of coffee.
My pleasure.
Or even in downtown India,
Yes.
you owe me a cup of coffee.
Touched.
Much love to your family and everyone else. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm so happy to meet you. I look forward to meeting you again one day.
Yeah.
And walk in the world in which you have created. I love to see it.